Good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. There's been a very tragic loss of life in the Indian Army today. 5 soldiers killed in action in a major encounter in the Rajouri area. This comes within 15 days of the attack on a truck in that broader area in which 5 other soldiers were killed. So 10 Indian Army soldiers killed in action in Jammu and Kashmir's Rajouri within a period of 15 days. This raises a lot of concerns, an enormous loss of life, unacceptable by any definition. But the terrorists involved in the attack today, and there is a sense that they may just be linked to those who carried out that terror attack on that truck about 2 weeks back, they remain at large. They may, in the encounter which took place, and let's talk a little bit about that first. Indian Army soldiers went into the forest in the area. The terrorists were inside a well-covered, well-protected cave, as it were. And then at some stage an explosive was detonated and 5 of our soldiers tragically lost their lives. Now, in the encounter, by the time it began, there is a possibility of some of the terrorists also having been killed. Now, the army continues its operations. It's not over by any means. So that's what we're going to be looking at first. Second, on this, we've got fantastic experts to talk a little bit about a story which the national media has almost completely ignored. We haven't. Manipur is on the edge. Who is fueling the fire? It is a complex situation that the country needs to be aware of. But first, the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Rajouri area. General Satish Dua joins us, as does General Syed Atta Hasnain. I'd like to thank you both very much for being with us. General Hasnain, I'm just trying to understand, 5 soldiers dead in an encounter all at once, and 10 soldiers dead in that area within 14-15 days. It's a huge loss of life. Your thoughts?
Thank you, Vishnu. I share your concern, first of all. I share your concern, and I wish to express my regrets on this unnecessary loss of life. But let me try and put this in context and explain it. This area has been under focus of the terrorists for quite some time. This is the area south of the Pir Panjal, the area between Rajouri and Poonch, the forest area generally known as Bhatta Duriya. This is also the area where 2 years ago in 2021 December, if you remember, there was a big encounter which ultimately led to a loss that time too, and we went in for a certain amount of operations in that area. This is also the area, if I may remind you, of 2003, where Operation Sarp Vinash was carried out in the higher reaches of the Pir Panjal in a place called Hill Kaka. And that also led to large losses for the terrorists. Now, over a period of time, as terrorism has abated, we find that the activity has shifted from Srinagar, from the valley towards the south of the Pir Panjal, where troop density is comparatively lesser, infiltration is comparatively easier, and there is an attempt to try and recover the terrorist supremacy, so to say, their attempt at supremacy in this area. We've had losses. Now, I have no doubt that the Indian Army will go back in the next 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, will wipe out this set of terrorists there. But this is a recurring thing. When there are 10, 15 or 20 terrorists holed up in an area as large as this, it becomes very, very difficult to search for them. It's a very troop-intensive kind of an operation which goes in. You have to use technologies. You have to use heliborne troops to probably maneuver from different directions. All this is happening and will happen in the near future.
Sure.
Only thing we got to just remember, Vishnu, the last point from my side, is that there has been a slight dilution of troop density in this area, and that's understandable. Because over the last 15 years, terrorist activity in this area had abated.
Right.
And there was a requirement of troops up north in Leh, Ladakh, where some of the troops from this area have also been redeployed.
Sure.
So it's just a question of time, actually, I'd say. But yes, unfortunate that we've had this loss.
General Dua, I'm just trying to understand what could have gone wrong. Do you believe that our soldiers were ensnared to enter some sort of a kill zone where a mine or an improvised explosive device was detonated, as a result of which there were casualties? And I ask this because in any special forces operation, these are special forces operators, the most well-trained of our infantry soldiers in many respects. they would, their operations are based on tactically spacing each other out. But to lose 5 soldiers all at once, I mean, I'm just trying to understand what scenarios could that be?
Is this question to me, Vishnu?
General
Vishnu,
Dua.
Okay,
Vishnu,
okay.
may I?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Vishnu, first of all, sad as this incident is, I would like to express my condolences to the families and as well as the units of these soldiers. Coming to your question. Now, this is an operation. The operation that has taken place today is an operation initiated by the army. The army had specific intelligence about presence of terrorists, and we are hearing from the media and this social media that these were perhaps the terrorists who were involved in that operation where 5 soldiers were killed in Poonch 15 days ago. So they have gone on a specific operation. General Hasnan has rightly brought out all the details or the history of operations in this area and how the troop density is being affected. But to your question proper, whether it is special forces or not, I mean, special forces are specially trained. They are very cautious. I do agree. But if a large amount of explosive is actually used, then it is bound to cause some casualty. These are occupational hazards. And it was a proactive operation. Things have gone wrong. We've had casualties. We just don't know yet. Even there, we are hearing something. I wouldn't like to talk about it. We are talking about casualties to the terrorists. There would be casualties to terrorists. Army has a standard procedure of not declaring any casualties till their bodies have been recovered. So we will wait on that, and I'm sure we will have the operations, like you said, are underway. Well, before I end, I would like to say it's like General Hasnan said, south of Pir Panjal is being activated because the Kashmir Valley, the grid is a little more robust and strong, and there are so many measures in place. But why are they doing this? We know what happened when Bilawal Bhutto's acceptance for this visit came about. We had that attack in Poonch, where 5 soldiers were killed. They want to instill overall what's happening, why south of Pir Panjal is also being activated. They want to instill that the other side, the terrorists want to instill a sense of fear in the minds of people in J&K that don't get complacent. When things are looking back as if they're going back to normalcy, that's the kind of buzz that we hear. So this is to instill fear in the hearts. If you remember in Dhangri, near Rajouri, some civilians were killed not too long ago. So all that is to instill fear in the mind of the populace, and that's why such attacks are being carried out.
General Hasnan, from the face of it, it doesn't seem to be local terrorists, right? This appears to be regular Pakistani forces, whether it's the army or terrorists or it's a mixed sort of group. As given the sophistication of the attack, to be able to carry out an operation where 5 soldiers have been eliminated today, that entire ambush of that truck which took place targeting a specific vehicle, these aren't would you agree with me when I say that the operators over here are probably Pakistani regulars?
See, Vishnu, there is a history of this over the last 30 years. I'm aware of it. I'm witness to the presence of SSG elements of the Pakistan Army in the Handwara area way back in 98, 99, 2000. And many other times it's happened that whenever terrorism has abated to an extent to revive it, some personalities of the SSG from the Pakistan Army have been inducted here to take leadership. And the Indian Army has particularly always targeted the leadership. That's one of the strategies we have followed. By targeting the leadership, we have made sure that overall terrorist capability was diluted. And that is the reason why you find presence of, high-profile personalities of the Pakistan Army many times leading these kind of operations. You are absolutely right, although I cannot say with any evidence. But it seems the kind of professionalism with which this thing seems to be being executed at the moment, the targeting of a single vehicle with 5 Jawans in it, this particular operation and the fact that a hideout high up in the mountains perhaps was well protected with the mines around it, with different types of switches and pressure switches all around it. It just smacks of the fact that there is a sophisticated element to it. And so this is a revisit to what I have been saying always, that the Pakistani leadership, Pakistan army leadership has its role here. But I have no doubt that our professionalism, the professionalism of the Indian Special Forces and the regular Rashtriya Rifle Forces here will neutralize this in the next couple of days. It is bound to happen, as it's happened before.
General Dua, you obviously track Pakistan very closely. We've had very strong remarks made by our foreign minister today. I'll play that out in a little while from now. But, there are a couple of international events. Firstly, there is the SCO meet, Bilawal Bhutto over here. A terrorist attack takes place. India accepted his presence in this country. Secondly, there was a G20 meeting in Srinagar. Before that, the attack on that truck took place. It's obviously terrorists trying to send a message. I mean, how do we address this? On the one hand, you can't say no to a visiting foreign minister who's part of a multilateral process. And yet on the day that he arrives, something like this happens. Again, I don't have a specific question, but how do you read this?
Like I said last evening on your channel itself, as far as an invite to the foreign ministers are concerned, technically it goes out from the SCO Secretariat. Yeah. So it is not as if India can invite or disinvite, as you keep sort of hearing or reading in the social media, etc. That cannot happen. So we have to act as we are chairing it. So we have to be responsible on that account, on that front. The day Bilawal Bhutto, it was accepted or it was announced that he would come here, visit in person for this, be here in person for this meeting. I think it was a day after that we saw that attack. So that attack was certainly connected. So the deep state there does not want any overtures being made that would sort of, I won't call it breaking the ice, and I said that yesterday on your channel. It's not breaking the ice perhaps, but even if a little wind starts flowing and some horse starts taking place, that is not acceptable to them. So they sent out that strong message. We are looking at G20 meetings. We are looking at all that. That is in its place because that's a multilateral engagement.
Right. And
even today's statement by the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, I mean, talking about we will show what Kashmir is. I would have said, and I said that on a couple of channels yesterday, it would have been more statesmanlike if he had also restricted his remarks to the multilateral agenda. And there are a lot of issues to be tackled in the SCO, and such multilateral engagements should not be used to further this kind of agenda. And so there is this connection between the attack that took place in Poonch and this meet for sure.
I just want to play out. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being with us and sharing those thoughts. Both of you have served extensively in that region. Thanks very much indeed. Let's just listen in to what the foreign minister had to say about the visit of Bilawal Bhutto Zardari over here and Pakistan and the link to terrorism.
As a foreign minister of an SCO member state, Mr. Bhutto Zardari was treated accordingly. As a promoter, justifier, and I'm sorry to say spokesperson of a terrorism industry, which is the mainstay of Pakistan, his positions were called out and they were countered. You know, victims of terrorism do not sit together with perpetrators of terrorism to discuss terrorism. Victims of terrorism defend themselves, counter acts of terrorism, they call it out, they delegitimize it, and that is exactly what is happening. So to come here and preach these hypocritical words as though we are on the same boat, I mean, they are committing acts of terrorism. Pakistan's credibility is depleting even faster than its forex reserves. आपका जो अनुच्छेद 370 वाला जो सवाल जो था, which is wake up and smell the coffee. 370 is history. Sooner people realize it, the better.
Those were the strongest words ever used by a foreign minister against Pakistan on the issue of terrorism. But Jaishankar, very, very clear indeed. Moving on, violence has broken out across Manipur between members of the Meitei and Kuki community. The government in the northeastern state has issued shoot-at-sight orders and has snapped mobile internet services to diffuse tensions and control the spiraling violence. Videos that you see over there show the destruction of property, a lot of burning, a lot of fires, even in the state capital, Imphal. The situation is now calm after violence broke out. But what we really want to understand is the underlying cause. And before I get to my expert panelists, let's just try and look at some of the contradictions and tension points between the Meitei community and other tribes. So it's a decades-long fault line between non-tribal Meiteis and some tribes. The Meiteis reside in the valley and they want tribal status. Hill-residing tribes like the Kokis, Zomis, they oppose the Meitei demand. The Meiteis form 64% of Manipur's population but own only 10% of land. The tribals form 36% of Manipur's population but own 90% of land. If given the quota of a scheduled tribe, then the Meiteis, it is believed or it is feared, may buy land in tribal populated hill areas. Now this is just one of the key concerns. There are others as well. Sanjoy Hazarika joins us, as does Patricia Mukim. Patricia, let me come to you first. Do you believe, firstly, for now, the situation on the ground is somewhat better than it was 24 hours back?
It's better, but there are a lot of people who need to be rescued from certain designated areas. They are living in great fear, and they're trying to reach out for help, but they do not know who to call, especially because there's internet shutdown, there's mobile shutdown. So there is still a lot of fear and tension, and I think rightly so. So I wonder how the army and the paramilitary forces are deployed. I think they need to reach out much more to different areas that are being targeted. The tribal inhabited areas of the Imphal Valley.
Sanjoy, as I understand it, there is a High Court order on the basis of which members of the Meitei community may be granted the status that they seek. Given that there is a High Court order, what does anyone have in terms of an option in trying to bring down tensions in the state?
No, see, it's not as simple as that. No, Vishnu, as you know, this process is long and complicated. First of all, it has to go before there's a process in the entire structure of declaring a community or tribe. And if I go into that, it'll be fairly long. The Registrar General of India has to be approached. Ultimately, it has to go before cabinet and parliament, because it's not just something that a state can declare. And this has been, of course, an issue in Manipur for decades. It's not a new thing. What has, I think, of most concern to all of us who are from the region, and I wish there were people on your panel from Manipur.
But we can't get them, as you know, because it's all shut down.
No, yeah. That's fine. But even on the phone, they can be reached. This I do know, because I've been speaking to people on the phone. It is absolutely imperative that first the violence has to end and peace has to be restored. Mm-hmm. And we are still getting reports of different, as Patricia has just pointed out, of people who are feel very insecure and extremely vulnerable in different parts of the state. And we're talking specifically in the valley area of Imphal and also in the Kuki-dominated districts. These are the other parts of Manipur are not having this problem as of now. And what I would also like to bring out, both Patricia and I are in Shillong right now. I think she's in Shillong, I'm not quite sure. But there have been, there is a fallout to these incidents in other parts of the region. And in Shillong, there have been people who've been detained on the account of disturbing the peace. There have been clashes rather limited. I think states are also evacuating members from their state from Manipur,
200
from Meghalaya itself. Yeah.
All right,
People
both
have
of you,
been
half a second. Patricia, I'll just come to you in a moment. I've got a couple of key flashpoints, and then let's talk a little bit about this besides the land issue itself. Now, flashpoint number one, some tribals were evicted as part of the state government's drive against poppy cultivation. A second flashpoint, tribal evictions were done without consensus of the Autonomous Hill Area Committee. A third flashpoint, churches used by tribals were demolished. The state has cited illegal construction. And flashpoint number four, a survey by the Chief Minister to root out illegal immigrants has angered members of the Kuki tribe. Flashpoint number five, an atmosphere of suspicion with the Chief Minister Biren Singh belonging to the Meitei community. Patricia, could you reflect on one or two of these points to explain how it's part of a series of concerns which is, sort of exploded now?
Yeah. I think this drive against poppy cultivation also has the sanction of large members of the Kuki community because there is a problem of drug addiction, huge problems. But I suspect that those areas evacuated from poppy would be used for marijuana cultivation because the CM himself has said he wants to legalize marijuana for medicinal and industrial uses. Now, that's a different matter. We also know that there are a lot of, quite a few drug lords in Imphal and in other areas. So their involvement in this whole, conflagration cannot be ruled out. While some people have welcomed this move against poppy cultivation, perhaps it hurts the interests of others. But this whole thing about terming those coming from Myanmar as refugees, because the way these areas have been, the boundaries have been drawn, the McMahon line as we call it, has left out the same ethnic communities in different areas, in different nations. Some of them are here in India, others are in Myanmar. If you look at the Naga community also, there are a lot of Nagas on the other side of the border. So when they are in trouble, they come and seek help from their kin, and terming them as illegal immigrants and then talking about an NRC and talking about face identification of the ILP is all kind of, they feel, the tribes, I think, feel pressured, and they don't know how to take out that they don't know how to release that pressure.
Yep.
Because if we look at the ST status for Meiteis, that's a one single judge bench court that has given that order. So the next thing would have been to appeal to a higher court or to even go to the Supreme Court if you don't like a certain judgment. I think violence really doesn't solve anything, but unfortunately this whole region can conflagrate, at any point, but we do not have peace institutions, we don't have peace building mechanisms, we don't have peace building NGOs of any kind that can come forward now. Now is the time to talk peace. Now is the time for church elders, for instance, to come out and say that we want peace at this point.
Sanjoy, would you like to add to that, Sanjoy? To deal with the immediate situation, can the centre play some sort of a proactive role?
To deal with the immediate situation, the centre has taken an extraordinary step. It's invoked Article 355, which is one short of 356, which is dismissing the government and imposing president's rule. It's basically taken the control of law and order completely into its own hands. 355, I have not heard of it being used at least I've tried to locate where it's been used. It's not really been used anywhere as far as I know. And this is an extraordinary step which tells you what the central government is thinking of the situation in Manipur and of the government, which is its own party, which is running the state. And I think that this has been building up for a long time. And Manipur is a very, very, very sensitive area which has a lot of ethnic diversity. But there is this tension which has been brewing for decades between the hill communities, between the Nagas and the Kukis earlier, but that has abated, and now between the Meiteis of the Manipur in the Imphal Valley and the Kukis. And I think it's very important that, as Patricia says, for everybody to urge that the violence ends, because you cannot have a situation where there are armed groups taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah.
And this is something that is pushing the state back to an earlier time. And it's very, very important, I think, that the situation is brought under control, that the communities which need protection, whether they're Meitei in a tribal-dominated area or Kukis in a Meitei-dominated area, they get the protection that is required. And we are still getting, as I said, reports that
of
this
some
is
sporadic
not
violence. I take that point.
No,
I need to wrap this up. I'd like to thank you both very much for being with us. There needs to be a much closer understanding of the situation on the ground, but finding a solution to this will perhaps take a long time. I'd like to thank you both very much for being with us. We're out of time on Left, Right and Centre. Good night.